funding, or almost, I mean, if there is such thing as proper, but there is a sufficient degree of public funding for publishing that can take over. So instead of Soros funding every second book, there are other players, and that's good because there is a diversity of players. There are also some private banks that have foundations giving money for books. So I guess that's why he withdrew, so to say. But
I have a question for you.
Or did I get your question right? I guess you were talking. Did I get it right?
Well, it's very much a top-down kind of model. But now, what's happened thereafter?
Well, I guess you can say that the democratization of Eastern Europe was a top-down model. Would you say that?
Yeah, I guess so, in a way. And no, I don't know.
When you say that, like, publishers aren't as in precarious a situation anymore, are most publishing companies, are they primarily funded by these entities, or are there publishing companies like there are here, the for-profits that just make money off of books? Is it possible to just become rich off of publishing?
It is, yeah. If you do,
Eastern Europe.
It is possible to become rich. I mean, not as rich as in other businesses, but you can become rich if you do textbooks. Textbook publishing is the only really profitable segment of the sector. Most publishers are like out of the, say in my country, but in other countries of comparable size, it's almost the same situation. You will have around 80 active publishers, and most of them are like middle size meaning from 10 to 30 employees.
Right.
And there are just few really big players out there. But one kind of different thing, very different from here, is that the big commercial publishers very rarely have an incentive to do also less commercial things, so titles of lower liquidity, how do you call that? Like titles that sell much slower, because at least studies show that audiences do not recognize publishers' brands. So if I'm a big, rich publisher of trash literature, and if I want to raise my profile a little bit, I wouldn't invest and waste basically money on obscure Bulgarian contemporary writer, because this doesn't really help my business. It doesn't raise my profile in the eyes of the audience.
Yeah, that's a problem here too. But out of the 80 publishers in a given country, how many of those receive funding or are subsidized in some way, do you think?
They receive funding per title, and okay, I did that experiment because I'm very fond of any kind of statistics, but there is no statistic on what you just asked. Out of the, say, 6,000 titles produced annually in Bulgaria, there is no statistics how many of them are directly funded by someone. So what I do, I go like once a year, I go to a few bookshops in Sofia, and I do the same exercise when I go to Belgrade as well. And I go to look at the shelves of translated fiction, and I literally count them. I open every single volume and look if it bears the logo of some funders. And I have to tell you a lot of that. Like, if you take out the top 10 best-selling fiction titles, 90% of the rest is funded by someone. And this would include authors such as Boano, but also McEwan. Because of as I said, the sheer limited number of audiences, authors that here would be like bestsellers on the cover of the magazines and at Barnes and Noble window at display, and in these countries they are actually getting funding to, or somehow cross-subsidized. I mean, if there is a big publisher who is investing publishing Pakiwan, for example.
And is literacy, as it compares in the United States to Eastern Europe, a factor?
No, it isn't.
Easily put.
You know, something that just dawned on me, I think that Europe also in general has a tradition of translations. I know this goes back quite a while, but during the medieval period, there was a huge volume of literature that was translated from the Jewish and Muslim compendial writers, the Greek and, you know, the late Roman period, was all turned into fodder for an educational system that was growing up. And I'm not quite so sure that here in the States, I know we do have a tradition of translation. I think of Solzhenitsyn, for example, and maybe that was popular for political reasons, who knows? But maybe that's part of the mindset as well. There's not as much of a tradition here as there is there.
I know more translators than I can count. There's more people involved in the translation industry. I call it industry, but there are more people involved in doing translation and working in translation. It's just so many people. I mean, thousands and thousands of people who have their hand in translation in some way. I don't think you can imply that that's a negligible number of people or that the tradition isn't there. But it doesn't translate into what's going on in Bulgaria, of course. But I don't know if the tradition.
Yeah, it's one thing to have a tradition. I mean, yes, there is a European tradition in translations, and yes, they are still, for example, in the universities, the languages departments are still quite strong, and there are and very diverse. I don't know how was the situation here, but you still have, they're barely surviving, but they're still there. All those languages departments, including Oriental, like very strong departments in Oriental languages, whatever distant language you can think of. But it's one thing to have a tradition, but it's another thing to have a proper publishing industry at place that can sustain that tradition and keep it keep it alive. And I'm always puzzled. I don't know, Chat, you maybe have a position on that, but I'm always puzzled that when we talk about publishing, we mostly talk in economic terms. We either talk in economic terms or we talk in cultural terms. Really, we either talk about the contribution of this and that publisher to the cultural development or whatever, or we talk about profit margins, prices, sales figures, and this kind of things.
What would you propose we do talk about?
I would propose we look for a vocabulary that somehow combines the two.
That's actually interesting, because it is like a very art and commerce crossing point. Publishing is, because there is unless you can be purely in the commerce side and be like a commercial publisher that's publishing whatever, you're Harlequin, you're doing NASCAR romances, you're going for that market, the need for speed, but then there's the other people who are way over on the other side. But generally, speaking, it is very much you like the art, and then you also have to make it work within the market or within whatever. So those are two kind of competing. There are things that pull a publisher apart. But when you take this, I don't know what that would be. I don't know what that would look like. Something
that is closer to a third language is the language of that speaks about cultural industries and tries to sort of take into account both the commercial aspect of publishing, but also its contribution to creativity, so to say. But this is a British thing that they invented 10 years ago, and they are already moving away from it.
That's interesting.
I was wondering if you could talk about in Europe, if book bloggers play a role at all in the publishing industry. Here, there's literally thousands of us. I was wondering what the scene was in Europe.
Thank you very much for the question. I asked Chad the other day how many people are following his blog, and I said, like,
7.
is it like 2,000?
You just saw all of our reviews.
So
No,
how
I'm just
many?
kidding. I don't know. There's a lot. I don't want to know. We get like upwards of like 100,000 visits a month, but that's sometimes not all unique visitors. It can be in like the 10,000 range.
Yeah, the maximum I could think of was 2,000. This was the biggest number I could.
That's right.
I could
This
think
is
of.
the context for your joke was that you're like, oh yeah, like the 2,000 people who visit your blog, and it's like, oh, I hope we have more than that.
Yeah. So, but seriously, no. Not at the extent it hasn't. It has impact here and influence here. Book reviewing in general is declining. Like there are less and less periodicals, journals, and newspapers have any book reviews at all. It's mainly there is very little trust in the audience, in the reading audience, in these book reviews because they are either advertisements, like covered as book reviews, paid advertisements, and yeah, you can't really tell the difference between a book review and a paid advertisement, so people get suspicious. You don't have literary, recognizable literary figures that would be book columnists or book reviewers that you can trust, people that you trust. Of course, there is a lot going on online, and there is literary blogging and book reviews in the blogosphere, but still that has very, very little impact on sales. And even publishers they don't consider these people at all when they make their marketing.
Here in the U.S., it's very easy to get like advanced review copies from publishers. Like you just ask and they give it to you. I guess I've heard that's because there's so many books left over.
She's essentially saying because we can't sell our product, we will give it away to everyone. You had the CALQUE blog for you're running a lot of stuff for on CALQUE on your blog, and now that the magazine's gone, have you ever thought of? I mean, I know you guys got a ton of submissions because there's a lot of translators that have a lot of stuff, are looking for places to place it. Did you ever think of just doing an electronic version of CALQUE to save money and to be able to continue?
No.
An iPad app, perhaps?
He's slowly heading towards his favorite topic.
It's not my favorite topic.
Digital content.
Oh,
We're
not
gonna
my
get to
favorite
digital
topic.
content sooner or later.
No, but not because I didn't think that online publications had editorial integrity or anything like that. It was a very small project. I don't want the context of this panel to distort how small this magazine was and how it just.
But it had like a pretty big impact in a lot of ways. Like a lot of people who were in the translation. No, I'm serious. Like a lot of people in translation did read the magazine and talk about it. And a lot of times, like with Michael, we were mentioning this before the panel started about this particular issue. Had an interview with the translator Michael Emmerich, who was part of the Reading the World series back some time ago, talking about how his translation was edited by an American editor and changed radically. And a lot of people talked about that piece and about the reactions to it. I mean, you guys did have like an impact because a lot of the people who were in this world were paying attention to it. So not to re-emphasize the largeness.
Yeah, to completely ignore that, but to go back to the print thing, I was really interested in learning about print publications and what it took to make a print publication that was continual, and so that was my focus.
Right.
If I was someone who was really interested in web design and in making things online, then I would have gone in that direction, and I think it could have had some really good results. My focus was just in a different direction.